eat while they're riding, and they're worried about them drinking when they're hot, and those kinds of things, and that all those rules change when you're riding endurance. You want your horse eating all it can eat basically whenever it wants to, and drinking as much as it can basically whenever it wants to. And Linda was talking about the rider being able to drop a sponge into a mud puddle. Well, your good endurance horses can eat at a canner, literally.
Don't jerk their head up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's really nice if you have a horse that will stop and drink out of a mud puddle.
Yes.
Don't discourage him.
Yes.
You know, a really nice one will let the group go on and drink and figure out, I'll catch up later, I need a drink. Wow, a horse, I guess the main thing is a horse that'll take care of himself.
Well, what do you do as your train? I mean, is that part of the training?
Yeah.
Stop at a mud
Because
puddle.
my guy, I can just see this. He will get a drink and continue onto the grass. It's just on the other side, and geez, I need to eat too. And 20 minutes later, we're still there eating.
Well, just a couple bites.
Yeah, have a
Couple bites.
and move on.
But we have horses like that too. They'd rather eat grass than anything.
Geez, I might want another drink.
Yeah. But a horse that will take care of himself like that can overcome physical faults that the perfect horse that doesn't take care of himself won't overcome.
So yeah, a couple bites. You know, you don't have to stand for 5 minutes.
While we're grazing.
How do you encourage it though if they're not going to do it?
Electrolytes.
And at some point, like I have horses that the first loop won't drink because they're
Yeah.
nervous and they're excited.
Yeah.
And pretty soon they start to realize that shoot, we're going to be out here all day.
She's
And
not going back.
they start to pick up on, oh, there's a water puddle or a stream. I better take a drink.
With Nitro, he was always he's a racehorse. He wants to go. I would get off at the water. I figured out that if I got off, that made me more calm and helped him calm down. And I would literally not tug, but I would try to draw his face down toward the water, and then he would drink. So, and now, you know, then he got past that pretty much. The older he got, obviously, the easier it got. But
Some
But if
horses
you're
learn
out training
when you.
and you get to a mud puddle, just stop at it. Even if he doesn't drink, stop at it. So he gets in the habit of, there's a puddle, we're going to stop. I had an old gelding that learned just the opposite, that he would get to a mud puddle and stop because he wasn't moving. And then I'd say, let's go. And then he'd put his head down and go,
That's what I'm talking
and then he wouldn't. And we'd stand there and I'd go, let's go. No, I'm
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Talking about Xantar.
I know.
He was so good at
Yeah, so I mean, they all have a personality, and you'll get that figured out.
When you
But
realize you're
give them
getting
the
work.
opportunity to drink. Give them the opportunity to have a bite once in a while. If you've done a section of a lot of interval training or stuff, let them go over to the side and take a bite and just chill, and then go back.
And it can also tell you how your horse is doing. If you have a horse that normally eats and drinks, and then all of a sudden they're not eating and drinking, you might be looking at something somewhat serious. You need to find the vet, tell the vet what's going on, say, hey, he's not eating and drinking. The vet's saying, yeah, he's looking a little lethargic. His mucous membranes are a little dry. Get some food and water in him. If he's back at your trailer, get him in a relaxed state. And if he's not still eating and drinking, you know, they need to take some serious look at him.
Take a look at the horse, yeah.
And actually, electrolytes is another one of those subjects that's everybody has their own opinion on. You know, when you should use it, how much you should use. So when I said electrolytes help them drink, I didn't mean just go electrolyte your horse. But everybody has their own recipe and their own everything. So
We usually mix it with applesauce. Some people put a little bit of corn oil in it for an energy boost also. And then put it in a syringe. You can get the syringes that have the bigger tip. They're a gastro tube, a feeding tube. And I even cut that off a little bit, and then you can syringe it right in their mouth.
Did you bring your gun?
So
I did not.
No, I.
if in doubt, if you're someplace and you don't
Well, I
have
don't use the
anything, if you always carry light salt in your trailer, potassium chloride, that's a good thing just to have on
That's
hand
a lot
as an
of
emergency.
potassium.
You're talking like just
Plain old light salt.
You buy it at the grocery store. It's in that blue
Morton
thing.
light salt.
Morton
Little
light
blue
salt.
thing. Table salt.
like they're about $3. And if you spray Pam in them, cooking spray, they slide because that rubber gets old and it makes it really hard. And then if you have some horses have problems with calcium, you can get calcium at like Farm and Fleet or whatever your farm store is. But that's where if you can get a stethoscope and do a ride. I mean, ride 5 miles and then see what your horse's heart rate is. And you can kind of get a feel for it. Say you came in from riding 7 miles and your horse's heart rate was hanging around 70. If it's not coming down and you're cooling them down and it's still not coming down, you could try calcium. And sometimes that'll bring them right down. It just kind of depends on what's going on.
That's good for thumps too.
Yeah.
But you don't.
But
hear
not
me-
all horses need it, but it's perfectly legal and it's something to try.
That's one of the advantages of starting with the shorter distances and some of the comp rides is you learn some of this stuff before you're out on 50.
I think the comp for that reasonable.
I don't know if we mentioned, but it's absolutely a drug-free sport.
Yeah, we did.
No bute, no banamine, nothing. It's drug-free.
Is there something like, don't go over 150?
When I was Dr. Beecher, when I wanted to start riding internationally, he had me running up a mountain for Illinois, trying to get my heart rate over 200. So get my horse's heart rate over 200, and then measure how long it took to recover. So with him, I started out, it was taking me 10 minutes to recover. And then after a few weeks, I was recovering within about 3 minutes. So
It's always a building process. It's always a building process. I live in a very flat land. Hills are hard to find. I do a lot of cavaletti work in the arena. Set up jumps, free jump them, gets the heart rate right up. It's a good way to get them loosened up in the spring. Again, that's a good way to cross train. So we do a lot of cavaletti work that other people don't do. So find what works, in your area too. We will trailer to go to hills, and you can just walk hills all day and get a lot done.
Or walking sand.
Walking sand will get a lot done.
They're
You go to
finding
Sand Ridge.
they're finding there's some rider like is it Valerie Canady or Becky that do a lot of walking. They do a lot of power walking. It's not just a trail rider walk down the trail. It's an active moving at 4 to 5 mile an hour at least walk, and their heart rates even in conditioned horses it will elevate their heart rate.
And that's hard to do. If you don't have
Yeah.
getting a horse to walk at 5 miles per hour is at least
yeah.
is hard.
So it
Yeah.
follows similar human conditioning.
Yeah, yeah. But also with human conditioning, you may feel like you can jog 2 miles. Maybe it's just a good day, but afterwards, you find some muscle groups that are hurting. And sometimes they hurt more than other times. So just kind of be aware of that on the horse. The horse may be having a good day, maybe it didn't get out to exercise and it's feeling good, like it needs to sprint and buck around. But just monitor him, see where he's getting sore. If they're ever getting lame, just back off, and you might want to have a vet come out and palpate something to see what's going on so you don't aggravate it anymore.
The other thing that I would say is, and this happens a lot, people, especially with a young horse, but he wanted to run, he wanted to go. It's your job as a rider to be the adult and say, no, you're too young, you can't go running through here at 10 miles an hour.
He'll use just as much energy at a slow trot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's true, you're dancing, but you have to, you don't want those horses starting out and blasting through, because they'll get excited, and they'll get, some of them do get a little wound up.
that is one of the advantages to comp is I think you learn to pace a little more, or it makes you conscious of pacing a little more, because you can get out on an LD or an endurance and you get wrapped up in the speed and the go and everything. Whereas the comp, you have that mandatory time limit, and so then it forces you to go, I can't be in before this time, or I need to be at this time, and it makes you think about it a little more. So that's a big thing, when to push, when not to push. Go ahead and use your push a little bit on a ride, slow them down, walk a little bit, push them again, You don't have to get on a ride and just go the whole time. You don't have to do that. So just pay attention, just really pay attention to your Someone was asking after the ride what we do. That's kind of an individual thing too. I'm a poultice, wet newspaper, standing wrap person. Some people just put on the poultice,
I do ice boots
ice
and then
boots.
poultice and then I don't wrap.
Yeah.
And then these ice boots, in the hot day, July, how do you keep those?
Put them in a cooler.
Freeze them ahead of time. Put them in a cooler. Send
These
somebody
basic
down
things
for
are
more
just,
ice.
I'm losing my ability to think today.
No, that's.
I forgot about a cooler.
On a real hot day, it's sometimes too much. I've seen horses shake.
Yeah.
You have to use your head.
Oh, yeah. Well, my cold ice boots for my little legs.
I'm poulticing down their tendons on all four legs, and then I go all the way around the fetlock joint. I don't know.
We all do it. We learned from Linda, so we poultice and wrap. You poultice and wrap now too?
Oh, yeah, we always have. We do ice boots and
Yeah,
then we
but there's so
poultice
few
and wrap.
people that do. I was the only stupid one that did it.
Now, Wes, who's one of the vets you see at a lot of the rides, thinks it's just wasting your money. To poultice.
I don't know. I've worked with a saddle horse trainer for a while, so maybe that's it. But
Oh, what's
I
poultice?
poultice. I put a wet newspaper on top of
It's
that,
like
so it
clay.
keeps that
Do you ever use
poultice
clay?
from drying out real quick.
You know what, Marty?
Feedback.
Save your feedback.
Keeps it wet for a while. I put a standing wrap on to give them support,
Charlie,
and I trailer home in
and I
there.
did a ride and I got
When
him
I
to
get
get
home,
these.
I turn them out
and
the
I was
pasture with
just
that
full.
on, and I don't take it off
So I went back to the trailer and I was doing my horse.
just to give them a
I
little
thought, shit, if this stuff's any good for the horse, it ought to be good for me.
Tell me again about
And I
poultice.
polished my whole face.
just a white clay.
And
Again, make sure you don't have something that has a medication in it.
It's a substance in a pot.
it proved
Has all
to me, because I go into it, well, you know that.
Yeah.
But you can do that after a ride. It's perfectly
I
legal.
polished the
Yeah.
rider, I put my own.
If there's a multi-day ride,
But they have different
endurance you could wrap, competitive
You can't.
if you had this, if it was a 50-mile ride, you're doing 25 one day and 25 the next, you couldn't wrap or any ice boots or anything. If it was two separate rides, you can do ice boots because you're checking in. But some rides will go, they'll have like 3-day 100 and all one ride. Now, in between that, you can't do anything that's not allowed on the
They go hard for Chuck.
Because your technical is considered still.
So we put on ice boots. Until they're no longer cold.
And then rest, what do you guys recommend for rest in between rides?
I give a horse 2 weeks off every 15 miles. And when I'm starting horses out, like their first year, I don't do more than 125 a month. Usually, I mean, sometimes it varies, but I try to give them plenty of rest. And I try to put between 150 and 200 limited distance miles or competitive trail miles on a horse before I go up. It just kind of depends on the clock, how the horse is doing.
In any season or just at the beginning?
At the beginning. Once I start doing 50s, I try not to go back. That's just like anybody else.
Once you're a marathon runner, don't go to 5K.
Right.
I have a brother-in-law that's on the marathon. He runs 100 miles.
Well, yeah.
I'm like, you can't do it. I can do it with my horse, but I am not running.
I think in Vermont they have a 100-mile ride and they do a 100-mile ride at the same time.
How many people, because there used to, when I was growing up, I remember a lady, she would run beside her horse and then maybe 10 miles out and then come back and she'd ride the horse. How, is that common?
Well, yeah, they're
I thought,
In the mountains, it's probably more common. On uphills and downhills.
How many people do you expect?
Or that can vary too. You can have as many as 40 people to go out a ride.
What's the question? How many people to ride?
People at a ride.
It was very interesting. Connie did a survey of Midwestern rides, and over half of the Midwestern rides had 20 or fewer riders,
Wow.
which shocked me.
Per division?
No, total.
Total, really?
Yep.
That is
And the reason she was doing that, there's a proposal to require to have 2 veterinarians at every ride. And the people that have these small rides say, we can't afford that. And that's another thing to appreciate is the fee you get charged for a ride goes to a number of things. I think it's useful to know this because I didn't know when I started. The ride manager has to pay a sanctioning fee to FEPRA, ARC, and anybody else, any other organization like the Arabian Horse Association. You have to pay a fee for that. So your ride fee goes to that. Then for every rider, they charge $250 to report the results. So you got that fee. Then for AERC, they charge, I forget what the first number is for the ride fee, but they also charge, I think it's $7.50 to support the drug testing program we talked about before. So you got all that you've got to pay, and then the other really big expenses you pay for the veterinarians.
And insurance.
And insurance, and insurance. And so that's what your ride fee goes to. And the ride fee is usually
Awards.
Oh, it also goes for the awards as well, for your ribbons or your completion awards, or like for a long time, Audra was using these as the completion awards. You would get a bucket. For best condition, sometimes they give out a chair or we saw
like
some
quilts.
of these blankets, coats, things like that. So that's what the fees go to. I would say for a novice, they usually like to keep the fees pretty low. I think it's 30, 35, something like that.
But I have the ride book with me. Oh, I should show you those 2 things. I'll go get it.
Well, why don't we just let her tell us what the fees are? But it's basically somewhere around 50 to 75 for a 50-mile ride, I think. A little bit more for 100. So usually, the more the miles are, the fees are a little bit higher because the vets have to work more. They have to pay them more. They do more checks.
And you mentioned, somebody mentions, if you spend the night, you obviously have the campground fees.
Yeah.
But I forgot about that part. So you'll have to reserve that.
If you go to Wisconsin, you'll also have a trail pass fee. And being as I'm from Illinois, I'm an out-of-state trail pass fee. I'm also an out-of-state vehicle. So you have vehicle fees and trail fees on top of the camping fees.
And
El-
like health papers,
I'm sorry.
health papers
It varies by state. You have to have a negative Coggins.
for everybody.
Yeah, and in Wisconsin, you have to leave a copy. So I just, at the beginning of the season, I make a bunch of copies and just keep it in my.
Oh,
So like if I go over to Iowa, I have to take health papers in addition to my
Anytime you cross state stuff.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But technically, it's.
Chris is going to give everybody a application fee for UMECRA for coming to this clinic. You can join UMECRA for free for the year.
Thank you for the donation.
Thanks for your donation.
Darn it.
Sorry. And this, you get a ride book like this if you join, and it has all the ride flyers in it, so you can go through and read about all the rides and decide where you want to go. You can also get this online on the UMECRA website. It gives all the rides.
Or the
And
CD, you can get a CD for it.
The book is nice.
we always carry one with us, and we write down notes about the ride. A lot of them you have to have reservations if you're spending the night. It's good to know which ones take reservations, and you get your reservation in. Like in Durban to Cure, if you're planning to come, reserve your spot. In Durban, sorry. Yeah, it's not Londres in Durban. And you go on to reserveamerica.com and reserve your spot for, and there are some open spots, but it's a lot less stressful if you have a spot reserved ahead of time. Now, the other thing I mentioned is that if you can go online on the UMECRA website, and they have a new rider's handbook, it's under the new riders section, and you can print that off and it has a lot of tremendous information in it. It has the score sheets, it has pictures about vetting in, it has just a lot of information. Obviously you don't have to print it off, but it's sometimes nice for bedtime reading.
And that hasn't been updated since they changed the rule on the Easy Boots. So when it says there's penalties for that, it hasn't been updated.
We have some other handouts too. Should I hand out all the
Well,
handouts?
we should
What?
talk about all that we have and see if people want them. We have copies of the Old Endurance News, which is the ARC publication. They sent us a bunch of those to share with people, just if you want to see what they look like.
Take them home.
You can take them home. We have, ARC also sent us some CDs that's actually used to train the veterinaries, anybody that's interested in being a vet, but it's also useful for riders to see what they talk about because they show different horses. You're welcome to take one of those.
You can talk about this.
Body condition.
Yeah.
Did you give the costs of?
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. So for our ride for the 50-mile endurance, it's $70 for seniors and $40 for junior. For the 25-mile limited distance, it's $55. For the 25-mile competitive, it's $55. For the novice, it's $30.
That seems incredibly cheap to me. I guess
Midwest is known for having
Yeah.
cheaper fees than ARC
In other regions.
other regions. So
I don't think you could go to a horse show for that money.
no.
But we don't give out silver awards.
And we don't have silver on our saddle, so it balances out.
So it all balances out. Good. One of these things that we forgot, I printed out a thing on body condition scoring. It's actually it's something new that they're going to start implementing, I think in the endurance world a little more, is how to judge these horses coming in that may be too thin. Horses that have been competing a lot, some of them just get too thin. And so they've come up, this is not a new concept at all, this body scoring, but it's a tool that maybe they're going to start using more than they have in the past. And so you may get to a ride, and if your horse is too thin, what they consider body scoring, they may not let him start. Or if he's too obese, they may not let him start. So I've got this, I'll pass out to everybody. This is also a good rule of thumb. It's got a lot of good points on, what to look for. Like a poor horse, his spine sticks out. The one thing I really hate to see in any horse is on the hip bones. I don't know if you're familiar with dairy cows, how the hip bone hangs out. He's too thin. He's tired. Take him home. But you'll see him. You'll see him. You should be able to see the ribs, but yet there should be cover to the ribs.
Can they have to bend before you can see their ribs?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, And so, like I say, it's not a new tool, but it's one that maybe they're going to start incorporating more. So I'll just let you pass those down. It's a good thing to use, even like
Is this
I said.
kind of that 9-point scale?
Yeah, it's that scale, but it defines the scale a little bit more. And like I said, they are going to start using this as part of the judging criteria in endurance. So if you get to a ride and your horse is too thin, and they do have the criteria now to say, no, you're not starting. Okay. And also, if you go to ride and you're lame, you may not start. So if you think you've got an issue like that, don't be surprised. This one we printed out. This came off, I believe, the UMECRA website. Yep. It's frequently asked questions. There's a whole big thing, but this pretty much summarized the difference between competitive, limited distance, and endurance. There's more on umecra.com, .org. And I'll let you pass that around also.
This is on the website?
Yeah, we printed off that one because it had the main summary to it. But AERC.org also has a whole educational section on it. It's got some good stuff. There's also a ride camp section on there where people go in and post questions and ask questions, and you will get all kinds of advice.
And there's the UMECRA Facebook page and the AERC Facebook page you can join.
Yeah.
And you make a green beans.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Jamaica
Green beans
for
is really
people
nice.
starting out. Yeah.
heard about that.
Yeah.
Must be a green bean.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's nice about that is I think it's a lot of people that are just getting started, so it's maybe less intimidating, and there are a lot of questions that, somebody that's been doing it a long time, it's like, oh, I forgot I didn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Or what seems obvious, you go, oh yeah, you should
Right.
know that. Yeah.
I mean, when I first started riding, I remember it was a cold, rainy ride, and the vet asked me after the ride, he said, do you have a blanket for your horse? And I'm like, no. I'd never even thought about it. So I had to pull a blanket out of my tent and put it on the rear end of my horse, so I didn't know. So, and the other thing is, 100-mile rides, I think the average completion rate is about 55%. So, it's higher, the completion rate is higher, at lower distances, but if something happens and you get pulled at your first ride, you don't complete, it's not the end of the world. It happens to everybody. So, I guess you really don't know how well your horse is going to do in that environment until you do it.
And I will tell you this, last year at the Nationals, I rode the first loop. It was a great first loop till the last 2 miles, and he was a little off. I came in, he was lame. I was still in the mode of, we gotta do this, and this, and get back out, da 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 da. And I thought he'll be fine, And I went up, I had to represent, and he was lame. And I just still was in the competitive. We got to keep rolling here,
Fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, it's a fresh set of eyes, exactly. And don't argue with them, because they are probably right. They're probably right. But it's easy to get caught up in that. I did it last year. I did it myself. And so it's easy to get caught up in it. When I went for my represent and they said, no, he's lame, I went, Linda, hello, So it's nice to have a crew with you that goes, nope, you're done. Or when the vets tell you, there's no need arguing. They're not there to be mean.
Right.
They're there to take care of the horse. Yeah. So.
And if you're interested in becoming a crew, there are people that go out. So, yeah.
What if you just want to volunteer or
Show up.
do
Oh,
a
absolutely.
crew? Just show up and say,
Or
hey,
call
I'm
your ride
available.
manager and say you're coming. They'd love to know if they've got people coming.
Is that the same for crewing? I mean,
For
when you
crewing, if you know a rider, like all of us know,
Yeah.
you could always say,
Okay, well, I'm strange. I also like cleaning stalls,
no, you know what?
Then you're going home with me.
Are you going over the crew thing with them? Did you really go over the crewing?
Not as
Stuff out here.
just the rider's perspective.
What to do as the crew person?
Yes.
With the crew person, what I want somebody to do is, one, take my horse and help me get my tack off. You need to understand how my tack works and what I want done. So you have to ask the rider what they need, what they prefer.
And sometimes it's a little sometimes it's a little stressful.
Because Julie's horses won't eat a carrot out of your hand. They have to have it out of her hand. And she has to bite off a certain size, and they'll eat it. And if you bite it off, it's the wrong
The
size.
one thing
They
to do
won't eat it.
is you need to listen. Like, sometimes some horses, when they start to drink, you have to stop cooling. You have to leave them alone. And then, what we'll do is we'll say pour, or we'll line up. We were going to talk about this. Line up the small buckets, make a little lane. If you've got multiple people, and this is a really competitive situation, and you'll follow the horse and keep pouring cooling water on them. Somebody's going to be pouring, somebody's going to be scraping, and you're going to keep walking that horse slowly over to the crew area.
Right. You might meet the rider out on the trail somewhere with water.
Yep, and electrolytes.
That's what I'm saying. If I'm coming to a ride, there are people that go out. Usually I end up riding somehow, but I will go out and crew. And it's not just, this is my rider, I'm only crewing for them. It's this is my rider, she's not here yet, here's some water. Are you guys okay? Do you need anything?
That was my question of
While I'm here,
who gets to set up for, is it like the Bix race? The first group comes in, well, you should be out of the way for the first group. Don't be slower. You're slower. Get out of the way.
The riders generally know what they need, and they know the crews. So if they're a competitive group, they'll say, hey, sorry, I'm competitive. You can't give them water because it's not designated natural. But and in the first 10 miles, hardly any endurance person will stop for anything.
Right, because the horses they're not gonna stop and drink. Unless you're Luxor. Luxor? Luxor!
You can do a ride along. Ride along.
So what else?
What questions do you have?
I was gonna say, you've been through everything.
Or what did we really confuse you on?
So if you didn't have a horse, what are you looking for in an endurance horse? Like you were talking about the shorter back.
Look at all of you.
You want ideally you want a horse with short cannon bones, good solid bone. You want a good sized foot on them. They need to have correct legs, or pretty correct. I mean, ideally, nitros. A lot of them are a little bit cowhocked, and that's not a bad thing. You want a big barrel, so they've got room for a heart and lungs. That helps. They need to hold a saddle well. And I've got a couple like Luxor, he's kind of mutton withered, and that just makes it more difficult. That doesn't mean they can't do it. But ideally, you want some nice clean withers, and so that you can hold that saddle without cranking up the girth. I ride with about that much air in my girth, so that they can breathe.
Yes,
Yeah.
So you gotta be able to balance, okay?
Their mind. Sometimes you don't know about their mind until you get more into it. My 7-year-old was pretty sure I was trying to kill him after 15 miles, but he did a 50 last fall and ended just chowing down on everything and had a good look in him. So sometimes they'll change.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll change good. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll regress, and it's just not for them. 12 miles is it. They just don't have any desire to do anything else.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of fun to ride a horse 25 miles and you're thumping them the whole way. So, I think it's good to get a horse from somebody that knows about endurance, because, ideally they know what you're looking for. But that doesn't, I've rescued tons of horses, ex-show horses, if they've got correct confirmation, they've got a desire and a willingness to go, it's a good place
and
to
maybe
start.
not so much go over to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Willingness to work.
Willingness to work.
Like Julie, you've said you kind of like the hotter horses.
Yeah.
I like a more mellow horse.
Yeah, I think that's really important. In addition to correct confirmation and a horse that's willing to work, you want a horse that you feel comfortable with and want to spend time with. You're going to have to spend hours and hours and hours with this horse, and if you, for whatever reason, don't mesh, that's not a good combination. Different horses have different personalities, and I think you want one that you enjoy spending time with.
Or occasionally don't.
I think we all have.
Legs.
It's hard because you develop a relationship
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially with the young horse, I'll never forget this junior rider. She's trying to hose off her horse, and her horse is just giving her a hard time. She's going, I love my horse, I love my horse. A horse in there, I love my horse, I do love it.
Well, and here, Ace is a good example, the one that was cantering in circles. I refused that horse several times because he didn't have enough bone, he had small feet, and he was just too delicate. And the lady talked me into taking him for nothing. And Doug, you probably don't remember this, but Doug was going to ride him, and he got bucked off 4 times in one day. So that was it for Ace. And so we were going to sell him, and I thought, well, I'll take him on one ride. And I did, and I fell in love with the horse. And part of me, I kept riding him, but I kept thinking, I really need to sell him. He's really not going to do it. But he's been an amazing horse. He's high strung. But last year I think he won 3 rides. It's taken him a lot longer to settle
old is he?
down. He's going to be 9. But I love that horse, and I can't part with him, and I have fun riding him. And he's never going to be a major contender, but that's okay. He doesn't have to be. I enjoy riding him. And